Hi, everybody. This is Leah Hughes with Mountain Roots Holistic Healthcare, and we are still talking about environmental toxins, part two today. There's a lot of environmental toxins, so I'm going to try to touch on the basis. Last week, we touched on heavy metals. So if you are interested in heavy metals, please go to our YouTube channel, and you can see our topic on heavy metals from last week. Lots of really great information. So here's our contact information. Like I said, I'm Leah Hughes. I am a nurse practitioner here in Colorado, and my office is Mountain Roots Holistic Healthcare, and we are located in Centennial, and you can reach us at mountainrootshh.com. So we are going to talk about toxins and just a little recap. All toxins create oxidation. They increase your inflammatory response. They displace proper elements with residue, and they like that phospholipid layer of the cells, that kind of fat layer of the cells. What disrupts the body's terrain? So we're talking about toxins. So chemicals, heavy metals, emotions, mold and mycotoxins, physical injury or accident, nutritional deficiencies, tissue death, and radioactive elements are some of the few here we've got. So environmental toxins, they are released into the water and air in the US, and quite a few of those, we're looking at 1.2 billion pounds. More than 80,000 chemicals in the US are used every day. Less than 10% have been evaluated for their safety standards, and approximately 7,500 have been evaluated only in healthy males. And we're not all healthy males, right? We're women, we're elderly, we're children, things like that as well. So sources of toxic chemicals. We've got things like insecticides, weed killers, solvents, cleaning agents, soaps, plastics, carpets, drapes, clothes, germicides, food, water, air, fungicides, packing material. I have lots of things that come to my house. We all get things delivered all the time. We love Amazon, but I know you can smell some of those toxic chemicals coming off those when they are delivered. So be cautious with that. And even plants can be toxic. So today we're going to talk about glyphosate. Glyphosate was first sold to farmers as Roundup in 1974. And hopefully I'm going to do this justice. Some of the glyphosate information that I've received really is very, very scary about what it does to the body. So originally, glyphosate, if you can believe it, was patented in the US as an antibiotic. It was developed to reduce or replace the reliance on herbicides. And in 1987, between 6 to 8 million pounds was applied by US farmers and ranchers. In 1996, the first year, genetically engineered glyphosate tolerant crops were planted commercially in the US. So basically, we used genetic engineering to grow a crop that was not going to be damaged by the glyphosate when we applied it to our food source. But they didn't genetically engineer your body to be tolerant of glyphosate. So that in lies one of the problems that we are facing. So by 2014, the annual farm sector usage of glyphosate was about 240 million pounds, and that's based on the average annual crop use. The current U.S. Environmental Protection Agency acceptable level is considered 1.75 milligrams of glyphosate per kilogram of body weight. But you will see as we move forward that really is not acceptable. So more than 80% of urine samples drawn from children and adults in a U.S. health survey of glyphosate contained glyphosate, 80%. So, I mean, just imagine 8 out of 10 people have glyphosate in their body. Out of about 2,300 samples taken from Americans, that was intended to represent the population, they found over 1,800 contaminated above detectable levels of glyphosate. In 2017, they also found an increase of 500% in the exposure since Roundup was introduced. So where do we find glyphosate? Public parks, schools and daycares, doggy parks. Like, I love taking my dog to the park, but they've treated those areas with glyphosate. In our backyards, we're using Roundup. We're using this to kill the weeds. We want nice, pretty green lawns. And when we're using these chemicals, we're applying them, and then we're going out there. Our dogs are playing in our yards. We're playing in our yards. We're sitting out there grilling and cooking. So we're just getting more and more exposure. Camping and hiking trails, and also highways as well. So where does glyphosate lie in the body, or where does it hide? In the brain. You also see it affect the digestive system, including the gallbladder, large intestines, pancreas, stomach, and small intestines. We find it in the lungs, and also in the joints, in the cartilage production of your joints. So when you're exposed to this, you can have joint pain and joint issues. So glyphosate, what are the things that it causes? What is it linked to? Well, it's linked to autism, cancer, such as lymphomas. It damages our DNA. It causes kidney disease by transporting those heavy metals that we talked about of the kidneys into the kidneys and contaminated water. It's also neurotoxic, meaning it damages the brain. It causes an increased risk of ALS. It is an endocrine hormone disruptor. So when we're talking about our hormones and trying to adjust those, and if you listen to my hormone lecture, you'll hear when your hormones are dysregulated, it causes all kinds of crazy symptoms, including mental health symptoms. It does cause birth defects and tumors. It binds to metals in the body and removes them, and actually acts as a natural metal chelator. It inhibits the synthesis of tryptophan, phenylene, and tyrosine in plants. And it was an antibiotic. We talked about that earlier. So it kills actually beneficial gut bacteria. So it's linked to things like IBS, C. diff, and celiac disease. So here's a little diagram here of direct toxic effects of glyphosate and the levels. And if you remember earlier, the FDA says 1.75. Well, look at this rate. In parts per million, 0.5, human cell endocrine disruptor. At 0.5, anti-androgenic, so opposite of male, decreases your male hormones. 1 part disrupts aromatase enzymes. Those are the conversion of testosterone to estrogen, and we do need that. So if you look through this, as these higher levels get 10 parts per million, it's cytotoxic to the cell, multiple cell damage, and then all systems. So Parkinson's, a lot of really things that we do not want happening to our body. So this is a really great slide, and I think it's actually kind of scary. This is glyphosate food testing results in foods. So if you look at the top up here, Campbell's Soup Company, goldfish crackers, like that's a common thing that we give our kids. I mean, I still like eating goldfish crackers, but a lot of children, they're super cute. Look how much glyphosate parts per million, 18, 8, 24. General Mills, Cheerios, right? Another thing that we're giving our kids. Original Cheerios, 1,125 parts per billion. Crazy, right? Come down here and look at Doritos Cool Ranch, 480. Stacy's Simply Naked Pita Chips. Who thinks that they're eating healthy when they eat these pita chips? I mean, I would have thought that before reading this. 812 parts per million. So I encourage you to kind of look over this. And if you're seeing these foods and they're in your cupboard, you might want to reconsider getting some of these foods out of there so that you can limit your glyphosate exposure. So glyphosate is also found in human vaccines. So these are a list of common vaccines that we see, like MMR, varicella, the flu, pneumococcal for as well. And look at these glyphosate parts per million that are in here. So even that, and if you remember from the heavy metals, we have found high levels of heavy metals in our vaccines as well. So when we are getting vaccinated, and I am not an anti-vaxxer, but I just want everyone to be aware of what they're being exposed to. You're being exposed to heavy metals as well as glyphosate when you get these vaccinations. So cancer, glyphosate is very, very linked to the development of cancer. So February 2019, this study showed a compelling link between glyphosate and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Then we've got January 2019. This is from the Environmental Sciences in Europe. Their EPA, they're stating that the US EPA classification of glyphosate disregarded the substantial scientific evidence in genotoxicity, so the toxicity damaging your cells, and the impact that it has on your genetic material. So April 2019, we see reported cancer risk from glyphosate exposures, and this is from the U.S. Agency of Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. In 2019, another study in March was published. This was an international journal, and it was data from more than 30,000 farmers in France, Norway, and the US, and it reported links between glyphosate use and large B-cell lymphoma. So moving forward, in February 2020, the Environmental Health did a comprehensive analysis, and what they found was plausible pathways of why glyphosate may cause various cancers when they were testing in rodents. So just to let you know, in July of 2021, Montecito, which is the main company that produces glyphosate or Roundup, said it will remove glyphosate-based herbicides from the U.S. consumer market by 2023 due to its litigation. At that time, it had more than 100,000 people suing them over developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I just want you to know it is 2023 and we still have glyphosate-based herbicides from Montecito still on the market for you to purchase and use. So glyphosate, when we're looking at glyphosate, there are things that we want to test. And how do we test that? Water testing, urine testing, micronutrient testing, metals and vitamins because of how it affects that, testing for oxidative stress, and testing your stool and microbiome. So what are we going to do? We need to recognize the problem that glyphosate is a problem. And by doing so, we need to have that labeled on the sources that we use and the things that we use so we know that we can avoid it. We want to remove the source. So for instance, if you're using Roundup at your home to treat those nasty little weeds, let's remove that source. Let's get it out of there. If you have a child and you're active in your community, I encourage you to look at removing the source when they're using these things on the playgrounds and places that your children are going. We also want to restrict the damage. We want to remediate and resolve the damage, and we want to restore your body system. So treatment. Let's see. I'm going to go over this slide in short bursts. So I have this, but this is going to be the whole thing for you. So the first thing we want to do is prevent continued exposure. So removing ourselves, knowing where we're getting exposed. And you did get that slide in the beginning where I told you certain places that are common and we find glyphosate exposure. We want to then work on removing glyphosate from the body. So things that do remove that from the body are humic acid. A lot of you know that I like Cellcore products, and Cellcore products have a lot of humic acid in them. natural xenolite, binders, and binders are things like charcoal. And then probiotics. And these are a few of the probiotics that have been found specifically to help remove glyphosate from the body. We want to remediate. So we talked about that glyphosate is a natural chelator. So what do chelators do? They remove heavy metals and minerals from your body. And even though we don't want heavy metal toxicity, there are nutrients and minerals that we do need in our body and we need to keep them. So we want to replace those and replace those minerals and those nutrient losses so that your body can function, because those micronutrients and minerals actually help the system work. So in your system, each item, it's a process, and it's like this happens, then this happens, then this happens, and this happens. For instance, the Krebs cycle, until we get to the final outcome of making energy. And you need those minerals and nutrients to go from one step to another. And if you don't have them, that interferes with how things are functioning in your body. So we want to restore after we've done this. So we want to restore the microbiome by healing it and replenishing it with proper nutrients and all those probiotics that you hear people talking about. Sometimes we even have to use fecal transplants to restore that gut. That's basically taking your poop from someone else who has a really healthy gut biome and kind of implanting it into your gut and allowing that to flourish so that we can restore what's supposed to be there. And we want to restore our soil health that we've been putting glyphosate on. And that's a really hard thing to do. So let's talk about another chemical, PFASs. So PFASs, and I apologize if I massacre the names here because I'm not good at it, but perfluorinates and polyfluoroalkyl substances. That's what PFAS is. They are also called your forever chemicals due to their half-life in the human body. They stay around forever. Like we're not even talking like 20 years. We're talking hundreds of years. So there are over 200 different PFASs out there. There's 31 that are common that have been identified and tested in humans, found in humans. So kind of a little history about PFASs. It was actually DuPont who introduced the first PFASs to the world in 1940s as Teflon. So a lot of you remember getting cooking pans that are non-stick. That is Teflon on those cooking pans, and that's a PFAS. PFOAs, those are the alkaline ones, have been emitted in the Southwest, including the Parkersburg, Ohio area, which is kind of crazy because let me tell you, that is where my family is from. My aunts and my mom live there right now. And so the plants that they were using from the 1950s to the 200s were emanating these into your environment and reaching your drinking water supplies, because guess where Parkersburg is? The Ohio River, which is a main thoroughfare and water source for a lot of people in the United States, in the eastern part of the United States. There was an ensuing lawsuit at the time, and the injury cases totaled 670 million. And this was also made famous in the movie, the film Dark Waters, if you're interested in that. So PFASs are used to make a fluoropolymer coating on products that resist heat, oil stains, grease, and water, and they can be found in the air, soil, and water in everyday consumer goods. So what kind of goods do you find these in? Clothing, yeah, furniture, adhesive, electrical wires, insulation, heat-resistant nonstick cooking. So I actually encourage y'all throw these cooking pans away, and especially if they're damaged. If they're damaged, you are getting these into your food when you cook. Food packing, drinking water, and cosmetics. So pretty much a lot of the things that we use every day, right? So the Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease Registry and the National Health and Nutrition monitor and conduct exposure assessments, and they identify Americans' exposure by checking urine and blood samples. So the NANE's biomonitoring study found 97% of their samples in American adults and adolescents had PFASs in it. Another one that they did on children ages 3 to 11 found 60% of those. So it is unknown what is a safe level of PFAS exposure, but the research is ongoing and we know that this is harmful to humans, even at minor exposures. So in 2016, they were saying it wasn't a threat at low levels of 70 parts per trillion. Then they changed the advisory and they lowered the safe threshold essentially to 0, right? So per the EPA, PFASs still pose risks at levels so low that they are not detected, even though they're allowing these to be in common things that we're exposed to every day. So what are the harms and the risks for exposure? Here's some things that it does to you. It altered your risk for asthma, allergies, and your antibody response to infections and vaccines. It changes puberty timing, sex hormones, thyroid hormones, increases risk for diabetes, causes changes in body weight, size, and growth. It increases your risk for kidney disease. The bone mineral content and density of your bones change. So think osteoporosis here. It increases and changes your cardiac event risk, and it increases the risk of kidney, testicular, pancreatic, breast, and other types of cancers. Oh, did I go too far? All right. So also causes skin irritation, skin sensitivities. It increases inflammation and oxidative stress in your body. It changes DNA methylation and increases cell toxicity and cell mortality. I apologize. I'm having a little hard time getting my slides advanced. So how can you protect yourself from these PFASs? So invest in a quality water filtration system. And I think in the last episode, when we talked about heavy metals, one of the things that I do recommend is osmotic water filter. Ditch that nonstick cookware. I've kind of already hinted at that. Reduce your overall toxic burden in general. So anytime you are paying attention to the toxins that you're exposing yourself by reducing it in your cosmetics, your cleaning products, all of those items that you're exposed to that we talked about with the glyphosate, how you are treating your yard and what chemicals you're using to beautify and having that green yard. Filter your air, keep your gut happy and healthy, and enhance your natural detoxification ability. So we've talked about some of these things in the past, but things like sauna, making sure that you're sweating are all great things to enhance your natural detoxification abilities. So I'm going to touch on mold and mycotoxin, and this is one of my favorite topics. So there are other videos in our collection that will touch on mold and mycotoxins if you want a little bit more detail than what I'm going to provide here. So they are naturally occurring toxic compounds produced by fungi. Yes, fungi, the same thing as mushrooms. And it's a classification of organisms that contain mold, mushrooms, and yeast. Chronic exposure can cause significant health risks and can even cause disease and death. And the harmful toxic exposure is mycotoxosis. So 95% of all buildings in America are water damage. No matter where you live, there is potential for flood and water damage. Even buildings in very hot and dry climates can have mold from from the condensation from air conditioners or also from your dishwasher hoses, your HVAC systems, all kinds of things like that. And I will caveat that, like when I live in Colorado, when I first came here, people said, "Oh, it's really dry here. We don't have mold." And at first I thought, that maybe that makes a little bit of sense, but I will tell you, there is a lot of mold here. So exposure. How do you get exposed to these things? Well, physical contact, dermal contact, they're absorbed through the skin. They can be inhaled in a home or building that has mold growth. Actually, I will hear from people that you don't have mold because everything's dry, meaning that there's nothing wet in your walls or things like that. But actually, when it's dry, it can be even worse because that is when the spores kind of break through and get in the air. And then you can be exposed also for the ingestion of contaminated foods. And there are certain foods that are prone to being more moldy than others. For instance, coffee is one of them. Corn as well. If you think about, they store that corn in that silo and it's really moist. I've personally been at the grocery store and seen all the corn on the cob and mold literally growing right there on the corn that they're selling you. So health effects, we can have allergic reactions, sensitization, asthma, neurotoxicities, nasal irritants, fungal infection in the ears and the nails, respiratory infections, skin infections, liver issues, even cancers, kidney toxicity, high blood pressure, hyperlipidemia, and weakened immune system. So how do you know known exposure? So if you've had water damage to your building where you work or where you live, it is a very, very high likelihood that you have some mold or mycotoxin growing in that area. So you can test your home and work. This is one of the tests that I do recommend called the dust test. And you can find that at thedusttest.com. That's a great way to kind of test for yourself before you get real deep and dirty. We also want to test you. So one of the things that we use to test people is called a visual contrast sensitivity test. So this measures your ability to see details at low contrast levels, kind of your ability to contrast gray and blacks. It's not something that you would actually notice on your own. It's a non-specific test for neurological function. If you're interested in doing the visual contrast sensitivity, this test usually costs about $30, and you can do so at mountainroots.vcstest.com. We also look at what's called the Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome 13-point questionnaire, or CIRS. CIRS is actually the syndrome that is caused from mycotoxin exposure. So you can ask yourself these questions. The way this questionnaire works is if you have one symptom positive in any section, that section is considered positive. So for instance, you see on number 2, we have weakness, assimilation, aching, headache, and light sensitivity. If you have one of those symptoms in that number 2, you would mark as positive. So the top one is fatigue. Don't we all have fatigue? I just kind of went over number 2. 3, memory issues, word finding, concentration, joint pain, morning stiffness, cramps, unusual skin sensation, tingling, shortness of breath, sinus congestion, cough, thirst, confusion, appetite swings, blurred vision. You got 11 down here with abdominal pain, diarrhea, and numbness. 12 with tearing, disorientation, and metallic taste in your mouth. 13, static shocks and vertigo. So if you have 8 or more of these positive, that out of the 13, that makes this questionnaire positive. So a positive visual contrast sensitivity test, along with a positive chronic inflammatory response syndrome 13-point questionnaire, is 95% predictive that the symptoms that you're suffering from are due to mycotoxin or also Lyme illness. And there's a few other things that do cause this as well. Also, COVID can do this as well. So if you went through these questionnaires and you linked on that VCS test or visual contrast sensitivity test, and these are positive for you, I definitely recommend that you see a professional who's trained in treating these and investigating them for you, because there's a lot more testing that needs to be done. So what do you do? Well, the number one thing for this is remove yourself from exposure. That is the main thing you can do. Even if you're seeing a professional or someone like me, it's going to be really hard for us to get you healthy if you're still in the middle of exposure. So what else can you do? The next thing is clean up your food. So we can eat organic, buy from the farmer's market, avoid the middle of the grocery store, check out the EWG's Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. I have the 2023 ones posted here for you to check up. I do believe there's been an updated version for 2024, and I apologize for not putting those in here. Clean up your water. So avoid plastic water bottles and osmosis water filtration. Avoid the toxin exposure in general. So make sure that you're using the most healthiest cleaning products that you can. I love vinegar. It's a healthy cleaning product, and it does a lot of really great things, including cleaning windows and mirrors really well. Check out your makeup, your laundry detergent, your lawn products. These are two links for you, the ewg.org and also thinkdirtyapp.com. These are places that you can go and actually look up the products that you're using or products that you think you want to use to see how clean they are. Clean your air. So change your air filters in your HVAC system. You can also use standing air filters. I have one here in my office. And getting your HVACs maintained and cleaned is super important. So I want to show you, this is, we did a YouTube video with Jessica McQuaid, who is the mold mentor. And if you click on the link or you go to our YouTube channel, there is a great video on mold, mycotoxins, water damage, how to protect your home, what to do about your home, all of those things. And she's fantastic, and it has really super great information on there. So one of the things that she's going to talk about in those videos, and you'll see that, is check your home for more water damage. So do you see moisture? Are there holes and gaps in the walls? How is your air conditioning unit? Do you have high humidity? You want to clean mold up appropriately. So if you see mold, don't use bleach. This is what I think a lot of us were taught to do. And you'll actually even hear this from professionals who come and do cleaning. They will want to use bleach. Do not allow them to do bleach. All it does is bleach the mold. It doesn't kill it. It doesn't make it go away, but it makes it look like it's gone, but it's still there and it's still going to cause havoc. A HEPA vacuum cleaner is very helpful. You can use borax to clean your clothing and soft furniture. You want to remove belongings that cannot be cleaned, and make sure you hire a certified mold remediation specialist to help you with that. And like I said, if you go to the Mold Mentors video in our YouTube channel for Mountain Roots, she has lots of really great information on how to make sure that you are hiring the right mold remediation specialist. So we want to test when we have environmental exposures, test, not guess, right? So heavy metal testing, environmental toxin testing, PFASs we can test for mycotoxins, and we want to test our homes if we're concerned that we're getting exposed there. The type of testing you do does actually matter. So you really want to make sure that you use a validated test. So I will tell you that urine mycotoxin tests are not considered validating tests. People do use them. Lots of providers do use them. But if you have issues and you actually need to go to court and you present that in court, they will tear you apart because the scientific literature has not validated that test. So I also have some testing kits available to you if you're interested. You can go to mountainrootshh.wellpros.com/patient/home. In there are test kits that you can order, and they come with a consultation from myself to read those. You can also talk to pretty much most functional or integrative medicine providers will be able to test these things for you as well. So what's another great thing that you can do for your body is detox. So sweat, you want to go exercising, sauna. We've got a guy that I treated a long time ago who had heavy metal toxicity, and he actually could not afford the treatment, the chelation treatment. And guess what he did for a living? He mowed lawns. So what did he do to basically sweat a lot of these toxins out is he wore plastic bags around his body while he was mowing to increase that sweating and that sauna effect. And it sounds really crazy, but when we retested his numbers, they actually came down because of the sweating. He kind of created a mini sauna in his body. Move your bowels. You want to have 2 soft, firm bowel movements per day. If you're not moving your bowels, your body is just reabsorbing the toxins that it is trying to eliminate through your stool. And then there are also many nutraceuticals depending on what you're detoxing to help you. There are medications. So definitely get guidance from a medical professional that has specific training in the toxins and removing the toxins that you are working on. Look at your food. Specific foods will bind to toxins. So cilantro, okra, and then make sure you're eating clean foods. And then also EMFs are toxins to our body. So we work on electronic detox. I know it's hard for us to give up our phones and our computers these days. I would encourage you to hire professionals. So I advocate for the mold mentor. She will help you navigate in cleaning up your home and getting you the right professionals because there are actually a lot of charlatans out there, unfortunately. And then make sure you find medical professionals who are trained in toxins. So I actually want to tell you a story that I am in some professional websites for nurse practitioners and things like that. And there was a post on there from somebody who said, "Do you have a protocol for detoxing mycotoxins? I lost mine." And my response was, you really need to make sure that you send these patients to somebody who has experience and training because it is very difficult. And her second response was, well, I have training. It was many years ago. And I tried to be very polite, but in my brain, I would not personally be happy being treated by a professional who had training many years ago and don't use their protocols often enough that they can't even find them and they're looking for them on Facebook. So those are the kind of people I would say try to avoid. So I do at Mountain Roots offer a complimentary 30-minute consultation. Here is the link. So if you are interested, you think that you might be suffering from any of these environmental toxins that we've talked about in these last 2 lectures, you are welcome to go to my Calendly and book that 30-minute consult, and we can talk about what's going on with you and how we might help you. So we're going to go to some questions here just in a second. And again, I'm Leah Hughes. I am the nurse practitioner and owner at Mountain Roots Holistic Healthcare. And we are located in Centennial, Colorado. And you can find us at mountainrootshh.com. Thank you.